I saw comments, people wanting AI Joe's baby and stuff.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, ugh.
Baby.
Hello and welcome. Shut it, babies.
Hello.
Get it out of your system.
Hello and welcome to the Cybernews bi-weekly podcast. Today we talk about Russian cyber crooks, obviously, quantum computing, and the famous Turing test allegedly passed by a large language model. I don't believe it, but will you? We'll see. Niv Ansel
Hi.
and Jurgita Lepenita, our boss.
Hello.
They're both joining me today in discussing things.
All things tech and
All
cyber,
things
yes.
tech and cyber, right. So Russian hackers is the obvious choice for the topic. We love those, and I hope you love those too. There's this super interesting report by a cybersecurity firm, Trend Micro. I found it really fascinating.
Yeah.
I found it really long though.
It was really,
Yeah.
really long, but our colleague did a brilliant job of synthesizing all of the information and giving us some key takeaways about, you know, what's going on in the Russian underground. So
Yeah, and I found what I found especially intriguing was that the whole story paints a truly vivid picture of how this underground evolved over the years and even decades. Because me and Jurgita, at least, we both grew up in this region, let's say Eastern Europe, where most of the software was pirated in the 90s, and IT guys had nothing else to do.
Like
but
people don't still do it.
Yeah.
Like in the 90s. It's not.
but I guess it was more prolific then.
it was more prolific, way more.
Of
prolific.
course.
Yeah. So I mean, we grew up in this kind of not ecosystem, but the whole atmosphere, I guess, and we kind of I especially recognize some of the patterns around these individuals.
Mentality, for sure.
for sure.
It resonated with you for
For geopolitical reasons and
for me,
geographical reasons. Yeah.
because I was brought up in a not completely different time, but I was brought up in the UK in the end of the 90s, early 2000s. It's really good at illustrating what makes a Russian hacker, because although we can speculate around what does, we don't actually know because they're shrouded in so much secrecy.
But also, I think it's very timely report, right? And the reason why it's good that it's out now, because recently we've been focusing on North Korean hackers, right, with the Bybit hack and their IT workers exports. So we've kind of, all the media spotlight was on them. But what we know, it's actually Russian cybercriminals who kind of, they are the trendsetters, in this underground world, and that's why it's so important, right? And I definitely suggest everyone who's interested in the topic to head directly into the report. It gives details and very vivid ones into how does this all work, right? So, Niv, why don't you give us a little, interesting details on that?
Yeah, the whole report is plus 60 pages.
60.
Yeah.
So don't give us all the details.
No,
but,
I've given you a few
yeah.
valuable insights. Well, some that I gleaned from the report.
Yeah.
The report basically suggests that there's a new breed of cyber criminal. They tend to be young, technically gifted, given the background of a math-heavy education system in Russia and Russian-speaking countries. Maybe you guys can relate to that. I can't, but...
Well, in terms of relating to that, I definitely know that even in Soviet times, trying to keep up with the West, the Soviets have invested a lot in their university and education systems, and they did concentrate a lot on maths and computer science and whatnot, and indeed. They do still, even now, have one of the most brilliant minds out there, I think, in sciences. All things considered,
STEM,
right? We do think of them as adversaries, but they're not stupid at all.
Well, it's like they're breeding cyber criminals.
But also, they wanted to briefly circle back to the thing that we just said, what's common with the mentality, right? And, us growing up in the 90s, we had to kind of be not technically gifted, but essentially tech savvy because like we were poor and whatnot. I remember like my father, he was able to do all sorts of things, right? He could do like electricity and plumbing and later even some computer stuff. They would all fix their own cars, right? Like doing some stuff at home, like refurbishing, I don't know, like painting walls and whatnot. And, I remember also having to do that, right? Kind of you learn how to install Windows, get rid of, some viruses, change some spare details in the computer. It just was the way we lived. And then I like, even though like the times have changed, we have money and we have services to do all kinds of, mundane things for you. I still find myself sometimes doing some things myself, not because I can't afford help, but it's just because the mentality is here, right? So I do
Second
things.
nature.
So I kind of, think that that's how Russians are. And, being under the sanctions and, not wanting to depend on the Western internet and technology and having good education system when it comes to maths and physics and computer and electronics. And they've been building their own stuff, right? Like the internet, firewalls, everything.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. In the 90s, it was basic poverty that kind of forced people to look for ways to keep up with other countries and to survive even. Now it's the sanctions. And the paradox of the sanctions in all sectors of the economy is that sometimes it can not only hurt the economy, but also paradoxically help the economy because you find ways then to thrive
Workarounds.
in restricted circumstances. You can build your own like RUNET or whatever, and all sorts of things. And they've been building drones for their war effort in Ukraine now because maybe they steal some technology like the Chinese, but I mean if it's open source or whatnot, why not? And I mean it actually helps the ecosystem to become even better and more independent, which is again, considering the crazy stuff going around tariffs right now, maybe not a bad idea.
Yeah. That's true.
Back to you, Niv.
Yes.
So what about those
Back
Russians?
to me. What about those Russians? Apart from being technically gifted, they're also highly motivated in the sense where they've kind of seen, this new breed of Russian hackers, they've seen kind of luxury lifestyles being pushed in front of them on their screens, but they have the juxtaposition of seeing their families scrape by from like a state salary, basically. So they're highly motivated.
So they want to be rich and cool and
although there are overlaps between state-sponsored hacking and financially motivated hacking, as per the report. So
that's what I actually wanted to ask you, right? Because as far as I understand, this opportunistic, financially motivated hacking kind of seeps into the whole state-sponsored kind of thing. How does that overlap?
Well, there are more there are more people that are saying don't support, not maybe more people, but there's this overlap because of the geopolitical situation and the war. There's more people that are going over to state-sponsored hacking and financially motivated hacking as well. So they just kind of overlap.
I just think some of the attacking threats or cyber crooks or gangs coming out from Russia right now are state tolerated more than state sponsored, and there is a difference of them just basically ignoring them and in that way simply telling them that you can just do what you want but not against us, and that's it.
Well, it said in the report that underground forums tolerate posts that target Russia, Ukraine, or both countries. So
target Russia?
Yeah.
Not US?
No. target
tolerate.
They tolerate posts that target Russia.
Who tolerates?
The forum admins and things like that.
What forum? What
As
things
in like
that?
cyber. Okay, so sorry, jumping ahead. Criminal forums in Russia are tolerating posts on that forum that targets Russia and Ukraine.
But why would they tolerate the post that would target Russia? Makes no sense.
Well, that's what it said in the report, I believe.
Yeah, because maybe something has changed. It seems to me that, and how it was before, that they would tolerate everything that would be against their common enemy adversaries, right? So as long as hackers are after, let's say, US, Ukraine, and their allies, that would be fine. But then when someone would be financially motivated to attack a target within Russia, then that wouldn't be okay. But now you're saying that has changed.
Yeah.
Maybe it's allowed until a certain point, and then if the attack happens, because we know the Russian state is a powerful one, and within the realms of the country, they can presumably find anything they want about a certain individual or whatnot, and if they find out that this or that has been conducting hacking operations against Russian companies, and especially if they're large companies, they're definitely related to the state. So they're not going to, just escape free from that. So maybe you can discuss whatever you want on a forum, but then if you actually arrange an attack,
then it's
screwed.
different. Yeah, that's probably true.
And also, in the report itself, it says also that the war in Ukraine has changed the dynamics a little bit.
Yes.
Not a little bit, really, because up until then, on the forums themselves, people used to just say, okay, so you're doing this from Ukraine, right? Okay, so you're doing this from Kazakhstan. Yeah, fine. So we're Russians and we're going to cooperate in this attack or whatnot. Then the war begins, Russia's fault, whatever, and then still the sides are, the enemies now. And I guess the whole communication between the actors there, it changes because nobody's going to, from Russian side, nobody's going to conduct, operations on behalf of Ukraine or whatnot, and vice versa.
No.
But it's really curious that some targets in Russia are allowed now.
Yeah, and the report also said there's a rise in hacktivism, which I don't know could go both ways, I guess. Like hacktivism in support of Russia and against, perhaps.
Yeah, could be. What else?
Talking about the cross collaboration and how the war has changed, the way that cyber criminals respond. There's more bonds with China, as maybe to be expected, but once the cybercrime forums and those kinds of spaces were worrisome of foreigners and people that didn't speak their language, and especially didn't speak the collective language among cyber criminals, right? Because if you know their slang, if you're Russian and if you're good at hacking, then you're in, basically. But now Chinese actors are becoming more, cyber criminal forums are becoming more multilingual, in the sense where Chinese actors are coming and spreading things around the forum, and groups openly post from China.
AI helps out as well.
Yeah,
you can
I'm sure.
auto-translate stuff, I guess. I don't know. I me personally, what I found fascinating about the whole issue is how and why have the Russian cyber criminals become what they have become. And like we mentioned before, it's a unique kind of situation, I believe, and I also believe that we should be talking about the post-Soviet hacking ecosystem, really, because again, I mentioned Ukrainians and the Belarusians. I think are quite IT savvy as well, and we know a lot of IT companies from Belarus now having migrated elsewhere because of Lukashenko. But it's the whole region, I guess, and the uniqueness of it all was that the Soviets have limited so much, and after the collapse of the USSR, a lot of things collapsed really, and everyone was poor in the early 90s. And then you have to survive and strive. We all had teachers of like computer science who have all educated themselves in the 80s and even 70s on super old Soviet style nicked from the US or whatever computers. And in, let's say, 1993 or 1994, your informatics teacher is basically a thick buffoon who doesn't really understand anything about modern, as it were, back then, computing. And that meant that you have to learn and educate yourself like super
Or you
amateurishly.
Or
No,
you
but
don't.
you do.
And you end up being a fool.
The only thing on the plate really in the region back then and even now is free education, because it lowers the barrier of entry to whatever skill set you want to gain, basically, because it's free to educate, to get into an institution and educate yourself. You're gonna pay $50,000 to $100,000 per semester or a year to get into Harvard or whatever, and then in Moscow or St. Petersburg or Kiev or I don't know, even the Baltic states, right? Even now, it's free. So the only thing that is free now, and everything else you have to work and fight for yourself. And you find ways, as you can see. And you turn into this super interesting subculture, Russian hackers. And I guess the dynamics of the state come into play. They have really libertarian, actually, kind of view into their relationship with citizens. But I don't know. I'm messed up right now. But it's super interesting. The only reason it was interesting because the whole transformation from the 90s till now, what happened.
And what I found interesting is that cybercriminals, they didn't use personally identifiable information or street cameras or security feeds before the war, like just to pivot back to the war. But because they saw this as kind of like mundane information, but now they're using like personally identifiable information to track military personnel and for psychological operations, and they're using street camera and security feed footage to send drones basically or target certain places like in Ukraine or whatnot.
Do you think they just feel like gaming? I imagine this young person who wants to be rich, right? They just doing this from the comfort of whatever their home, probably. Do they even understand every time that they do something that it actually hurts, let's say, people?
They
in
must.
This case,
they must do.
Like the way you describe them, this sounds like they are gamers here. Maybe that's not true, but
well, yeah. And one part of the Trend Micro report said that criminals are basically recalibrating their moral compasses, prioritizing ideology, vengeance, and survival over legacy alliances. So it's like...
So they're playing Diablo, really.
Yeah, I guess. So it's like, maybe they are aware of what's going on, but they're, doing it now for different reasons. Like, maybe that's why it's tolerated to talk about Russian hacks or Russian hacks from Russia or whatever, is because they don't have these legacy alliances anymore.
But still, the way it sounds to me, it's the gamification of war. And we saw that from actual troops being sent to Ukraine, like at the very beginning of this war, right? That suddenly these young boys came to a realization that, this is happening for real and we are not really welcome here and whatnot. Suddenly them understanding what's going on, and it seems like at least I guess that, part of them really know what they're doing, and maybe they have some moral compass here, like what do they do, what do they draw the line. But especially the younger ones that you described, the ones who just want to lead lavish lives. And we've seen so many examples of Russian hackers actually like driving Lamborghinis and whatnot, right? So it seems like just gamification, just something they are playing. They have a common enemy. So we do attack, US. We fly some drones. We tap into cameras. It's cool. We steal some data, get some crypto on the way, and
and as Ginter said, like because the barrier for entry is so low because of the free the education you get.
I was more talking about older days.
It's still kind of similar here.
But also the hacking, like every solution is off the shelf. You don't really need to be a coder or a hacker or as, proficient in coding as you had to be like 30 years ago.
Well, because, like you said, AI automation and all that. All that fun stuff.
Yeah.
All the fun stuff.
Yeah, it's also unique in my view because because the Russian hackers or gangs of hackers right now, I don't believe they're targeting Russian organizations or institutions at the moment. But they do have leverage against the Russian state, I believe. The reason Moscow or the Kremlin, I think, tolerates those activities is that if they attempted to crack down on gangs, the idea that they're going to turn against the Kremlin then is a pretty realistic one, I think. And then maybe they're not targeted because the state knows that shit. Maybe they're gonna attempt to hack one of our institutions and shut down plants and whatnot. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting landscape over there.
Yeah.
Enough about that?
Enough.
60 plus pages for your attention over there in Trend Micro. I'm sure you've seen the link on the screen by now, but let's move on. And the next topic today is quantum computing, something I'm really keen to learn more about.
Aren't we all?
Yes. The
minefield.
The question is our ability to understand, isn't it?
No comprende.
Yeah, so I'm just going to quickly introduce what's new on the front of quantum computing. You're going to simply spoke to this guy named Troy Nelson, the CTO at security firm Lastwall, and asked him what he thought about, I said it in the Canadian accent, about the three major announcements by Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. They're all debuting new powerful chips, again, connected to this whole quantum computing stuff. So is Q-Day finally on the horizon, Jurgita? And what is it all about? Yeah, I'm not going to ask too expensive questions.
Yeah,
but still, what's going on?
There's a lot of going on. I'm always going to be this advocate that, we should talk about this more. I get that this is not AI. It's not here that there's a lack of application of quantum computing. So obviously it's not mainstream information. But recently there's been, as you mentioned, three big announcements. They are very different, but they are essentially scientific breakthroughs, and while scientists and experts are still arguing whether those claims made by, Microsoft and others, they are true, are they over-exaggerated or not, essentially it brings us closer to the Q-Day, and this is something that everyone is fretting, right? To put it in very simple terms, the Q-Day refers to a day when quantum computing will be powerful enough to break the classical encryption, meaning it would be able to do the computation needed to read all your messages, unlock state computers, state secrets, every information that we send and which is encrypted safely, it would be able to crack, right? So initially, just a year or more ago, we thought that, okay, so quantum computing is somewhere on the horizon, but because we still need science to get there, it's going to be 10, 20 years or so, and there's going to be enough time for us to figure how to protect that data that quantum will soon be able to crack. It would break Bitcoin. It says if we had a quantum computing right now, fault-proof, fully functional quantum computer, it would break and sink the Bitcoin. So this is big, right? The innovation we're talking about here. So the recent announcements bring us closer to that day.
Can I ask like a child, really eager to learn more about quantum computing and simply to find out what that is?
That's how children are.
What's the well, it depends. It depends. In Russia, maybe. What's the practical usefulness of quantum computing to an average person anywhere in the world? What do I gain with that? I mean, can I explain? Obviously, with AI.
Yes, you asked to explain this.
No, I'm going to explain the question.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think it was pretty clear,
Go ahead.
No, because with AI tools like these chatbots, like chatgpt or whatnot, you can subscribe to them for 20, 30, the premium tiers for $100 or $200 per month. you will not be able to subscribe to some quantum computing shit, you know?
At some point, maybe.
But it's not going to be cheap.
Surely not.
As an organization, you might allow, yourselves to subscribe to that, but it's super expensive. It's
Yeah,
super
but-
expensive to develop these chips.
But even AI these days, right? I think there's way more use cases in like science and elsewhere than it is in our daily use, right? So what we use it for, I don't know,
Making
relationship
memes.
advice, making memes, like funky LinkedIn posts, whatnot. It's not really a good use case, whatever you subscribe to it or not. But what AI can do, and pretty much the same, we have the same hopes for quantum computing, just a different scale, and we can just imagine what the symbiosis of two could do. Essentially, it would be able to perform any kind of computation way faster. Now, we do have those supercomputers, a lot of computers put into one place, let's say like a big building, like a basement and whatnot. They are extremely expensive, open only to research institutions and whatnot. Only very rich companies or, governments can have those. Even those can't, compute fast enough for us to solve the big things, right? And essentially with quantum computing, just because the way physics work and the way science works, we will be able to solve very complex questions
Like what?
real
Like
fast.
what?
Like, let's say some, climate change problem, right? So now the way science attacks that is, would feed a lot of different scenarios into an algorithm, into a computer, right? And then ask it to give us different outcomes, So what if we do it this way? What if we do it this way, right? And every possible scenario takes a lot of time to compute and to give you an outcome, right? And then you want to ask questions on top and feed data on top of that. So then you prolong the time it takes to compute, right? All that. So essentially, at some point, it would be able to solve very complex questions of, physics and science at once instead of, just waiting. Now, only when you, let's say, upload a lot of data, like terabytes of data on a USB or on a computer, it takes a lot of time, right? But that's just uploading. Imagine on top what it takes like to actually make some computations and sift through that data, right? Just because of all this chatgpt and Ghibli thing, right? The GPUs are overheating right now, and it's doing nothing, right? This is not treating cancer or solving climate change. But, to put it in simple terms, quantum computing will be able to do the same what Altman said about AI, right? So discover all physics, solve climate change, poverty, all that, all the big things, because we will be able to ask computer the right questions, and it would spit out an answer real fast.
Is quantum computing better for the environment?
No.
No. So it can
Not-
solve climate change whilst also impacting climate change.
Again,
let's not
solving
go there.
climate change.
Sorry.
Let's not go there.
That was my
This
one
is,
question.
This is just an example that it's quite clear to
Yeah.
understand, right? But
Yeah. Okay.
technology and science is not there yet.
Yeah.
That's
Hopefully one day.
hence it's expensive, and that's why it's expensive, because it requires a lot of materials and energy
Okay. Yeah.
to compute.
That makes sense.
Yeah, you have to spend more to save more, I guess, in the future. Is quantum computing, do you think, less snake oily than AI? In terms of
Don't think
the
AI
promises.
snake oil. I just think that this is the marketers who made it snake oil, right? Because they saw the wider application. Quantum computing is not snake oil just now. There's also a discussion whether we will need quantum computing because of the AI thing, right? But I will not get there just now. But now it's niche. It lacks, as you said, wider application, meaning you can't sell it to businesses and people and ask them to subscribe or build their business strategies on quantum computing. Therefore, sellers and marketers are not there yet. It's kind of condensed research. It's within like government state level discussion rooms, and it's it's being discussed and researched in the universities. It's not commercially viable just yet. Therefore, it's not snake oil yet, because the marketers are not there.
Yeah.
Salespeople are not there just yet.
Pesky
But they will get
salespeople.
there, like the moment they sense that,
And then we'll be using quantum computing for all the menial things that we use AI for, maybe.
Wow. Just add AI to every website and say it's AI.
Quantum.
Now,
Amazing.
many companies are actually adding post-quantum, but because the post-quantum encryption algorithms are there, and especially the US, but also elsewhere in Europe, they are rushing the post-quantum encryption algorithms to move from the current classical encryption to the post-quantum one, because they are preparing companies and themselves for that Q day, right? This is very real. So for now, and a lot of companies who have something to do with encryption, they look towards the future, and they do work with the post-quantum encryption, and it's becoming a buzzword, but in very niche industry.
No, but
for now.
even the UK authorities, I think a few months ago, they posted a bulletin saying that companies be advised, you should try to move on to post-quantum cryptography efforts, because
Europol as well. I mean, but it's
will move there eventually. And another thing is that the concept of harvest now, decrypt later is already out there as well. I mean, much data that the hackers have stolen from anywhere in the world are just sitting there. They can't decode it now, but they probably will be able to do that with quantum computing when it arrives.
That's what you mean by harvest now, decrypt later.
Yeah, they have just
harvesting loads of information to be able to decrypt.
Yes, literally what it says.
literally
Harvest now.
Look at me.
Harvest information now, store it, save it for later, and decrypt later when
with
you
the
can.
quantum stuffs. So smart.
Amazing. Okay, topic number 3 of the day. You mentioned AI, and here we are talking about AI again. The news is that the OpenAI's latest large language model, GPT 4.5, and not only passed the Turing test, but outperformed actual humans in being perceived as human. There's been a study done in the university in California. It's preprint, it's peer-reviewed, so I wouldn't actually,
take it with a grain of salt.
I would take it with a grain of salt.
Yes, take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah. So I mean, I'll explain later why it's all a little bit, I don't know, too early to be joyful about or whatever, or scared about. But
scary.
Yeah. So what happened is there were a bunch of participants of the study, human participants, who conversed with a human and with an AI model for 5 minutes each, and then had to say which one was human and which one was an AI.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that the GPT 4.5 can hold a conversation and trick people into thinking that they're actually human. So the model was given this allegedly carefully constructed persona, a socially awkward, slang-using young adult like you.
Me! Yes.
And
She's a teenager.
I'm 15.
And it was mistaken for a human 73% of the time. Are you human?
Jesus Christ. Well, that reminds me of something like, maybe I shouldn't go off on this tangent. You continue.
You've begun, so
I've begun. Okay. There was this meme where somebody sent an email to their professor, and they were like, haha, I can see that you've used AI to write this email. And he was like, no, I'm just autistic. So that reminds me of this.
Yeah, there's a whole range of hints that people can imagine or not about other people communicating with them. But anyway, 73% is still way above the chance, the 50% rate. So, and the study authors, then add very proudly that the results constitute the first empirical evidence that any AI passes a standard three-party Turing test. So very quickly, the Turing test was developed by this British scientist, obviously Alan Turing, in the 1940s and 50s. It tests how well computers resemble and understand human thinking. Now, the problem... Sorry.
Peel myself up.
The problem about this study and actually the Turing test and the misconception about the Turing test is that it doesn't really test whether machines are thinking. It's not a test of an ability of a machine to think like a human, because a machine is a machine.
But
it's
it
not
can't
going to be
think
able.
like a human, can it?
It cannot think
Can't
like a human.
think.
The Turing test is supposed to see whether the machine can trick a receiver, so to speak. If in that, okay, I'm human. I'm speaking to you as a human. Can you see that I'm actually a machine? If the other person cannot, then voila, the test is passed. The problem with that, what do you think about this all, by the way?
The trickery.
The deceit.
But there's a brief point to the topic. We just covered a report by Press Gazette, who said that many journalists were fooled by so-called, fake experts because, like BBC and The Guardian and Fortune and Newsweek and others, they would rely on, experts' quotes. And it turns out it's not only AI that, is being used for written commentary and that is being sent out to journalists and newsrooms, but also companies just fake experts these days, right?
That's so wild.
So this is very important, right? So the top minds are being tricked to believe, and you, like we discussed at home. So how would you even know that someone is fake, right? So usually, like, okay, I can pick up the phone, maybe I can call that person who sent me the comment, and but then what are the chances that it's the same person who sent the comment? And even videos, as we can see, they can be deep faked, and you can talk to someone who is not even a person these days. So this is really important, and we need education here probably to kind of learn how to distinguish. How do I understand that you are a real person, right? Especially if I am communicating with the machine behind the screen. It's getting harder and harder, and this is an important development if this turns out to be true. Well received by peers.
It might be, but the other interesting thing also is that you cannot really say that the model, in this case GPT 4.5, is an intelligent one. It's just gotten to be coded very well into mimicking humans and human behavior very well.
And surely you can still see patterns within that.
Well, about that, the thing is that the models were given this persona, like I said, of socially awkward Neve, for instance, right? And then if the persona is not given onto a model, the perception rate, the success rate of it being held as a human drops from 73% to 36%.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So in other words, it wouldn't have passed the Turing test without a prompt. It's not that amazing, of an achievement, I would say. And also, like Jurgita said, maybe we do have a need for education more and more now, because most of the phishing emails are going to be more sophisticated now and emotive or whatnot. But then education or self-education should happen in that. Don't just be naive, guys. I mean, please, maybe if you're not sure, like in this case, if you're not sure or you don't know whether if it's a human or an AI, just ask the more difficult questions, I guess.
Yeah.
Persona on top or not, if you have 5 minutes and you use those 5 minutes just to weirdly converse, like, how are you? How's your day? What's going on? and the chat very humanly, the chatbot replies to you, and then they say, yeah, probably it's a human. It's not enough. I mean, I don't know. Well, I do know. One psychologist said that this was not actually a Turing test. It was a social chemistry test, not a measure of intelligence, but of emotional fluency. And on Reddit, people made really had really good fun with that research, by the way, because
I'm sure.
yeah, I mean, this person on Reddit played around with his GPT 4.5 model and tried to do a Turing test on him or on himself with himself, and the bot allegedly again immediately gave itself away when it replied to the first question, "How are you doing?" It replied, "Haha, doing good, enjoying the chat." First question, how can you enjoy a chat from the very first line? And obviously,
Very inhuman thing to say. Also,
But also-
enjoying the chat.
But I think that's so weird that could be a thing that a human says,
A
right?
socially awkward person might say something.
Aren't
like
we
that.
all socially awkward?
Haha.
But I
enjoying
mean,
the chat.
like, passing that test or not doesn't really matter that much anymore. Like, we are getting fooled by bots and automated solutions all the time. Like, hasn't it happened to you guys that you log on to some chat bot of, let's say, your telecommunication service provider, right? And then like says, "Oh, hi, I'm Ostea. How can I help you?" So now you know. But before you would like type questions,
Yeah.
and it would take a while to understand, that okay, this probably is not a person, right?
No, I'm not ever chatting to these assistants. I'm gonna crash the screen of my laptop.
Trying to avoid all human communication as much as possible.
Oh, well.
But I mean, so before it would get clear that this is a bot way sooner, right? Because it wouldn't get the specifics of your situation. It couldn't, navigate its databases and whatnot. But now if we are talking about things like Apple Intelligence, right? Intelligence that could go through different apps and, browse resources as you talk to it, meaning it could actually be more and more trickier to understand that there's a machine behind it, behind some persona.
Yeah. Do you know what the researchers instructed the large language model in this experiment? They instructed it to use less than 5 words, talk like a 19-year-old, so not you, Neve, and say "I don't know" a lot. So like a young adult of today, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess the slang and whatever works. But the context then is that you cannot really say that a model is passing a Turing test when you're giving it minimal instructions. If you want a real test, I guess, of the model's intelligence,
Give it no instructions.
no, you should just ask in-depth questions about life, the universe, or everything, and hold a conversation, a proper one, like candlelight and all that.
Oh.
I don't think I can hold a proper conversation under any circumstances.
I think
Anyways.
this podcast is evidence of that, but
Yeah. All right.
and on that note,
On that note, we, the free humans,
3 Musketeers.
well, speak about yourself. All right. This was Neve, your
Hi.
Gita.
This was me, yes.
This was me. Bye.
And this was me, Gintras. Thank you for watching and listening, and see you or hear you again in 2 weeks. Bye.